There you are.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Hey,
guys.
Paul. Hey, Julie. How are you?
All right. How are you?
Good.
First of all, I'm sorry. That's on me. So
Oh, no, it's totally great. You know, we're not the most known company, Creative Character Engineering. But I got to tell you, Paul, you know, seeing that the Space Mouse is going to be part of ZBrush, everybody who works here is going to be asking me for one next week. So thank you very much for that.
absolutely. So who we have?
Hi,
Andrew Clement. Go ahead.
I'm Andrew Clement, and I'm the owner of Creative Character Engineering, and we are a company that specializes in what I like to call practical organic effects. We do everything from things that replicate human bodies or get glued to human bodies or get worn by human bodies. Pretty much everything that we do is surrounding the human body in one way or another, or an animal body, something. We've come from a traditional background. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I started doing this professionally in 1981, so I've been doing it for a minute. Like everybody else, we've really started to transition into a lot more of a digital workflow. And ZBrush has been a really integral component to that. I can't tell you, what we would do without it. I have no idea. I began doing poly modeling for visual effects way back on Hercules and Xeno using Lightwave, and I've transitioned into ZBrush exclusively. I still rely on poly modeling very heavily, and ZBrush has actually become a really big poly modeler for me. So I want to talk a lot about some of the things that we've done recently in ZBrush, how we've done it, and I thought one of the most interesting things that we could touch upon is actually how we're going directly into mold making. Completely surpassing the step of making a print, cleaning it up, and prepping it for molding and going through the traditional mold making process. We were actually looking to just jumping directly into molds, and I think we've done it a couple of times for some smaller pieces, and I think it's going to become more and more of a standard part of our workflow. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to show on my screen. I don't know if you want to jump to my screen here, but can you pull that up? I just wanted to show that we began from that's
my screen.
That's screen.
Are you sharing your screen? You need to share your screen, Andrew.
I need to share my screen. Let me do that. Sorry.
No worries.
Little sneak peek into what I'm going to talk about.
There you go. A little, yeah. Give a
little teaser.
Give a little teaser for Bill's part.
I'm amazed at all the stuff behind Andrew.
That's
all this.
Yeah, and we've got Bird and Bill also with us today too. Was part of Andrew's team.
Okay, great. Yeah, the people who will be joining me are Bird DePrez, who is in charge of running a lot of these machines that you're going to see that we use. We use 3D printers, laser cutters, and we have a 6-axis robot, and he is a wizard at figuring out the tool paths and doing all of that sort of thing. He's a new user to ZBrush, but he's picking it up incredibly well. And we also have Bill Crichton, who is the head of our 3D department, and models some of the most incredible stuff that you've seen on our suits. But I just wanted to show that we began doing traditional stuff, and we still do a lot of traditional stuff like Deadpool. We did a lot of the appliances for that show, for Deadpool himself, and for some of the background mutants that you see in that show. And I'll show how we're segueing into doing some appliance molds actually in 3D. But we're also, if you don't mind me showing, we began using 3D, using ZBrush in earnest on shows, on the show Black Lightning. Black Lightning was really the first show that I had dabbled around in ZBrush doing all kinds of things, smaller things, and I'd always really never considered myself fluent in ZBrush, but Black Lightning was an immersion for me, and we were actually able to create the hard parts on this suit with ZBrush and doing all 3D printing, and this was the show that I really exclusively learned ZBrush on, and then we've gone and done so many shows. If I can scroll through this, we've also done Black Lightning's daughter Thunder. We did her entire suit in ZBrush. We've done the boys recently. We've done Starlight and the Deep and Queen Maeve and Homelander and A-Train and all of the other characters are all in ZBrush. For Doom Patrol, we did Robot Man and Cyborg, both of which I'm going to talk about today. Some more Titans characters, Wonder Girl, Hawk, and Dove. So you can see that it's just a tremendous array. And with Stargirl, we've also done. So we've done a tremendous amount of suits. We've done over 200 suits by this time, between the originals and the duplicates and everything. So, but what I really wanted to do is really jump into the making of a piece here. If I can grab. I want to jump back to my camera for a second. I just wanted to show what I'm going to show you is the making of Robot Man's neck. Now, this is a project that we got to make this character Robot Man, and he had this really complicated neck that had all of these pieces, and necks are really difficult, and to really do one, they've got to be really flexible. And they've really got to move in every direction. And the thing about this is it had all of these plates that obviously had to slide one over another. So what I did is I just really knew that we had to get all of these parts directly off of the printer because we had absolutely no time to do it. We spent a great deal of time engineering Robot Man's head. And what we had to do with Robot Man's head is we had to find a way to actually create it in a non-traditional way. Because usually when you make something like this, you'll make a head and then you'll make an underskull under it to fit on an actor and to cinch down and really have the head not joggle around. But there was, every time we did that, every time we modeled something with traditionally, it wound up being too big. So what we wound up having to do is make the actual outer surface and the inner surface both one and the same, so we could keep it extremely tight against his head. So we spent a fair bit of time doing that, which didn't leave us a lot of time to do the neck. So what we had to do is we got our parts, the hard parts, off of the neck directly off the printer. We have a Markforged printer that prints things that are durable enough that we can actually make on-set pieces for them. So we went that route for the external pieces, but then we had to generate this silicone piece that everything would tie into underneath. So I was going through all different ways to do that, and I just wanted to take you through all the steps that I went through to actually get a piece on the character that we could actually run on a 3D Systems machine in Acura. We actually made this mold is directly 3D printed. So you can see that it's made out of this 3D printed material, fairly clear material. It's, like I said, it's an Acura material, and we backed it up with an epoxy with cloth traditionally in the back, because we did wind up running this about 4 times, and it's not a perfect material. The material did wind up cracking after a while, but we after we got that many runs out of it, that was kind of the run of however many we need, because we'd actually wound up changing actors for it. So after we did that, we wound up having the time to traditionally print it and mold it and go through the proper steps to really get a real a mold to have a lot more longevity. But if it hadn't been for 3D printing the negative, there's no way we would have gotten it done. So I just wanted to show you the steps that I went through. So if you want to pull up my ZBrush screen here. So we start with a scan of the actor, as we always do. And the other guys who you're going to see talking later, they have a different way of going about modeling. But what I love to do is I love to just start sketching out what my suit parts are going to look like actually in poly paint right on the bust. And so what that allows me to do is really quickly, in like an hour, I can shoot something back to my costume designer, LJ Shannon, who designs all of our wonderful costumes here, and I can say, hey, are these lines sort of what you had in mind? And I think it's a great way to work that in about an hour or two I can begin to get some sort of idea of whether I'm on the right track or not, and I don't really have to spend any time modeling that I'm going to waste. And there are not a lot of people that you can do that with. Some clients that you do that with are going to be like, well, what are you showing me? I have no idea. Well, these are just lines on a maquette or on a bust. It doesn't show me anything. But LJ understands what I'm doing. She knows that I'm really just trying to execute really quickly. So once she approves where some of my lines are, a lot of the time I'll go in with the topology brush. I love the topology brush because then I can start to just actually trace out where I am, where some of my edges are going to be. Sorry, I missed that. And I can start, if I've got design lines inside, I can actually, follow all these design lines, and I'm doing it really quickly, so I'm going to get a lot of crap topology and crap geometry here. But you can get the idea. If I've got interior lines or something like that, I can, let me get rid of some of these. But yeah, if I was taking more time with this, you can see what I'm doing. But what I can do with this is I can get a really quick, low resolution. There we go. So, and I can start to get something that, will actually look like my hard part contours, my silhouette. And I can look at this and I can get my silhouette correct really, really quickly. And by the end of the day, I can say, are these really covering the areas that you want me to cover? So once I've done that, then I can actually really start to flesh things out, and I can really start to get all of my negative pieces. So this is sort of how I got here. I did all my topology brush, and just basically started pulling forms around and refining them and subdividing it, and doing all that, and doing some creases, and that's sort of how I got all of my outer shapes for the hard parts. So that worked really well, and I got approval on this, and then we could actually start to run these on the 3D printer and start getting that process going. So, but then once I jumped from that, then I had to start thinking about, how am I going to do the interior? How am I going to do that silicone sock that's going to zip up the back, that allows all of these pieces to be held in place and overlap and compress one on top of another and not collide, give them a full range of movement and not expose that it's, there's really a piece of silicone underneath of it. So what I did is I took another version of all of my parts and I started to outline where underneath I thought my silicone sock was going to have plateaus. Basically what I wanted is I wanted a 1/4 inch silicone sock with all of these little silicone plateaus that would come up and hold all of these pieces in place. So once I had all of that, I figured out not only where my silicone plateaus would to give some support, but I also figured out where would I need to lock these pieces down, because what I'm going to also have is little pegs to register all of these silicone pieces in place, all of these 3D printed pieces in place. So then if you take a look under this, you can see that that's what I started to do, is wherever I started to make those outlines, I actually masked off and I started to extrude out all of these areas up to the base of my my 3D printed parts to begin to have some sort of support for them.
Right, so the actor's wearing this underneath and you're snapping the parts.
Exactly. So basically what you're taking a look at here is I've actually taken my the cast of my actor, and not only have I've extruded my 1/4 inch here to be my silicone sock, but I've also given an area where there's going to be contact. I'm already starting to think about how this is going to be molded at this point, because I know that there's going to be areas where I'm going to have a gap between my two my positive and my negative mold, and there's going to be areas where I'm going to have contact, so it's airtight. So when I inject silicone into this mold, it's all going to fill and it's not going to spill all over the place. So that's what these areas here are. These are areas of contact that will allow, this area to fill with silicone, but this area is going to hold it back. And these areas are areas, you don't want your entire mold to be in contact. You want as little points of contact between the two pieces of mold as you possibly can, because that'll give you a finer edge. If you've got too much area of contact, it's too much, it actually makes a poorer mold. So, and you'll notice here that I have a little 1-inch cube. That 1-inch cube is really important for us, no matter what it is that we do. We start with a 1-inch cube in our scan, and we keep a 1-inch cube through everything, just to make absolutely double sure that nothing's going to ever be out of scale, and everything's going to match up perfectly. So once I've done that, I went, oh, I have a little ZBrush problem. Then I went to, oh.
You're out of edit mode, that's all. So back to on your stroke, drag rack. Change your stroke to drag rack.
Draw. For some reason, I've lost it here. I've never had that happen.
Just hit T on the keyboard.
Yep.
Right, there you go.
There we go. All right. Is that the same one? That's the same one.
Yep. I don't think that's a tool. I think that's, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I may have lost one here. Okay, well, I have to skip a step. But this is basically the next step, where I took my original scan and I began to carve off the areas that I didn't need, and I also began to add keys to it. And then what I could do is I could Boolean all of these together. So not only did I get negative keys and positive keys where I needed them to be able to actually have these things fit together, but I also hollowed it out so we would be able to actually produce something that wouldn't kill us financially to have printed. It was an expensive print to have done, but it wasn't quite so bad when you compare it to how much time it would have actually taken our mold makers to actually do. So then after that, then I could actually start to really begin to construct this mold. If you want to, I'm gonna shut all of this off so you can see really where I wound up being. Okay. So there's my, yeah, there's my positive mold. Here is the modeling that I've done. You can see all of my plateaus that are underneath that are in silicone. And now what I'm doing is I'm actually just taking, I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but what I just did is I just began, I'm a poly modeler guy, so I just created a box and I basically started dragging it around so I could get a shape that would have about, you know, somewhere around 3/8 thickness, you know, that really covered all of my shapes and gave me thickness outside of my mold, but also I could drag it into, so I could make sure that it overlapped. So when I Booleaned out my part from this, then I was going to get a really good mold surface that wouldn't have any voids. So, and I wound up doing, I found out where I wanted my dividing lines to be, which were about there. And I just started to create these molds that, mold parts that completely encompass the mold. So now this is where I took care of the actual thickness and the surface of my mold, just making sure that, you know, these surfaces were thick enough and they penetrated enough that I was going to capture all of the areas of my sculpture. But if you notice, I stayed away from each other with the seam lines here. That's because I wanted to construct these mold walls and let the mold walls take care of the actual seam. What you really want is you want your seams to be as hairline as you possibly can get them. So what this did, hold on one sec. So what this is going to do is I created these walls exactly the same way as I created everything else. I wound up making little strips that were about 3/8 inch thick, and made these. First of all, I started with a front section and I made these. And then basically the shape of these, I could make a second shape that would fit, that wouldn't have these keys on, that I could Boolean out the second one. So when I would Boolean these to the front section, but Boolean these out of the back section, it would give me mold sections that would fit perfectly together. So then what would happen with that, then that came to my final piece, which this is the full negative mold. So what you're going to see here is, you're going to see, I'm not showing you the core just so you can see the inside. So you can see the result of all of the Booleans. You can see all of the negative spaces of these plateaus that I sculpted in. This is the surface area of the thickness of my original. These pegs are all the negative registration points for all of my 3D printed parts. Here are my keys. This is my contact area right here. This all allows all of my silicone to be poured in here without spilling all over the place. This is going to be a whole negative area that's got exactly the thickness that I need. And this is going to keep all of my silicone inside the mold when it's all poured under pressure. This is the area that keeps the molds from having too much contact area, which is going to create a thicker seam. And these are my keys. And this is all, thank God for live Boolean. I don't know what I would have done without it, but that feature came along just in time for me to do this. So,
and then your 3D, this is what you're 3D printing. Do you know what?
This is exactly, yeah. This, using 3D, the 3D printing hub, and, going off of my 1-inch cube, I would say, okay, tell the 3D print hub, use this 1-inch cube. This 1-inch cube is 1 inch. Everything else sort of corresponds to that. And we wound up with a perfectly scaled negative and a negative mold for the silicone.
So what printer? Do you know what printer is being used to print it out?
For this, we have a lot of 3D printers. We have about 7 3D printers in-house, but this one was too big and we needed a high resolution. So this was done on a 3D Systems printer. I don't know what model it is, but I do know it is in the Acura resin, which was tough enough. If we did get some cracking on this mold, even with the epoxy reinforcement on the outside. But it got us through, and there was absolutely no way we could have traditionally molded it. So
someone was asking for those thicknesses you were talking about on your walls. You're using that 1-inch cube to get your measurements?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're using the 1-inch cube as sort of a reference point for everything, but it's not really what I'm using to actually measure. What I've done previously is I've gone and I have a set of I've created a whole tool that I can import that has an inch cube, and it has a lot of other measurements that I might need. I have everything. I go down into fractions of an inch, and I go up into, feet and meters from that. So I have this, and I also have hardware. I've created something where I've brought in, all of my metric and English hardware that I can pull out of that tool, and I can say, okay, I've got this 1-inch cube, but I also need to know exactly what like a 1/16 of an inch would look like in this 1-inch cube world. I know there's ways to do it with using the transpose line, but this is just much easier for me. I've just it's like I've got this virtual caliper and this virtual set of scale blocks that I can use within ZBrush, so that I know is always going to be accurate.
Nice. This is great. They're loving this. You showing this, down how you're doing this and making the molds. Great. It's really valuable information for everybody. Okay, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, this was really, it took me a minute to figure out some of this stuff, but I mean, it really, it's really straightforward. It's really, if you know traditional mold making, you're going to have a real big leg up, because you can understand all sorts of things that you're going to need to know about making a water tape mold and undercuts. Undercuts are a huge, I'll talk about undercuts in my next piece that I'm going to talk about. But you really have to make sure that you can design a mold that will not lock together.
there's nothing worse than making a mold, and it's happened to me early in my career where you just don't anticipate that some of the shapes that you're going to make are not going to release from one another freely. So, and I've got a one trick that I came up with doing an appliance mold that I think is going to be pretty helpful. So, do you want me to keep this up, or are there any other questions? Something people would like to see before I jump to something else?
The only question I saw coming through, unless Joseph, I missed one. Can you model a joint? So, do you do any joints with any of your processes?
We typically don't do joints. What we have been doing is we've been making animatronic heads with skulls and with servo blocks that do have the ability to put things, traditional joints and traditional servos locked into these things, and they do fit one-to-one. We wouldn't, in our business, typically make a joint out of 3D printing because it's just not strong enough. We would really go with a traditionally CNC milled joint out of aluminum or steel or some sort of store-bought joint. So typically we use 3D printing for things that we're not going to have as much stress on the day. So let me jump out of this then, and let me jump into the next one.
Right, and again, Andrew comes from a background of a traditional sculptor and worked on so many films, so he's just taking his process and expanding it and adding a beautiful workflow with him and the team, using digital ZBrush, and then still doing his techniques that he's done for years.
Thank you. And I have to give a giant shout out to Joseph Drust.
It's right here.
I know. I see him. He's right on the screen. Back when I really want to get into 3D print, we had done a show called Repo Man, and we really wanted to expand the 3D printing. We did a lot of 3D printing on that show, but after that, I was like, I really want to do things in-house. So we bought a resin printer, and we brought a 3D printer, resin printer, and a Formlabs. And Joseph had this beautiful thing, and he was kind enough to let us print that. And it was just a wonderful thing to allow me to be certain that all of our 3D printers would work together. That was done on 3 different 3D printers, and I just wanted to make sure that everything would calibrate and everything would glue together and it all fit together perfectly.
And I know you mentioned, right, this was a huge learning process, right, doing this one.
It was huge. I mean, at the time, it took me way longer because I had to break everything down to fit on these printers. It wouldn't take me nearly as long today, but it was a great trial by fire, and it really taught me a lot, and I'm so grateful. But let me jump on.
Yeah, look, the helmet turned out awesome.
Thank you. So
turned out excellent.
I am going to jump. I don't know why this is up.
I think that's why Andrew's pulling up another file. That's for everybody too, right? That's a good way to learn certain features. It's a good way to learn certain workflows. Like, put yourself in that workflow and just go through it, and then you'll learn something, and you'll get faster and faster, and you'll discover new tools that will help you get to your end result even faster. I think that's just like the Hasbro guys were mentioning, to learn articulation, buy some toys and literally take them apart and reverse engineer it. And it's one of the fastest ways to learn, in all honesty.
Well, I have to say, I dabbled in ZBrush for many years before Black Lightning came on, but it's like a foreign language. If you immerse yourself in ZBrush, you'll make incredible gains so fast.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the next thing that I want to show, which was sort of a really new thing for us, which is generating an actual appliance mold for 3D from a 3D print, a direct 3D print. So this is a scan that we actually did in-house. We have a photogrammetry unit. There's a bunch of cameras on it. I think we're up to over 60 cameras now. And we did this of Brent Picker. This is an in-house scan that we had done. And I decided I wanted to do an appliance scar on his cheek. So basically you can see that we've got a raw scan here, and we've got our 1-inch cube that we always have. And the next thing that I would do is I would start to break down the area of his face that I would want to, let me shut off live Boolean so you can see. So I've chosen the area of the face that I want to actually put the appliance cylinder on, and gone and and decided that that was where it was going to be. Now, I wanted to show you a couple things that I'm actually going to do, because I'm going to go back and forth with live Boolean, and I'm going to add certain things and subtract certain things. The first thing I'm going to do, and the first thing that you normally, whenever you're creating an appliance positive, is you get rid of undercuts, any areas that are going to make your mold get trapped together. So what I've done is I've taken some primitives, which is really a great thing, because I can be certain that my my surfaces are going to be geometrically even. And I cleared out using a cylinder. I cleared out behind the nose, and I cleared out inside the nostril using a little bit of a sphere there. Now what that's going to do is, just if I left this hole there, I could have a piece of plastic go into that nose, and it's not going to be able to release. But I just wanted to show this one thing that I thought was really interesting that I decided to start using. A lot of the time when you are making an appliance mold, you're going to use a round bit down key, just so you have areas of registration that your two molds will go together. Now, I was starting to do that for a little while, but then, in the virtual world, what I decided was even smarter is just to go in with a capsule shape. Because a lot of the time when you're using, even in the real world, a traditional router bit, which is sometimes you'll have areas that will still be an undercut, even though you've used this round thing. So, but if you use it's oriented in the direction that you want to pull out your mold, you're never going to have an undercut for these. So what I did using live Boolean, I actually created, this is going to be my positive for my generating my appliance mold. And I'm going to go through this really quickly, because I think I'm about to go long and shortcut everybody. So but then what I did is, once I had this positive, I actually made a replica of it, which is hidden inside of it. But I also scaled it, and I made sure that the keys didn't get in the way. So this has just been scaled in the y-axis a little bit. So I have this flesh-colored positive sitting underneath, which what I can do now is I've sketched out in polypaint where I want my wound to go, and I can actually go in and I can start to begin to use, I can start to mask off certain areas, but I can also start to sculpt, and that'll draw through my duplicate, and I can actually see, it'll look like I'm sculpting in clay and getting some sort of change in the surface. So then, once I'm done sculpting, I'll come up with something like this, which is not only my my scar appliance that I've sculpted here, but I've also sculpted, like you saw me do in the last mold, my flashing area, which leaves my keys exposed, but then it's going to minimize the amount of surface area that's going to make me have a bad mold. But from this, I can actually do, again, I can go through the entire process, and I can put can't find it. Shut off live Boolean. Let me see real quick. Yep. There we go. So doing the same thing, now I get these molds, again, just using Boolean to pull out from that what you just saw me do to get a native mold. And then if you want to jump to my camera real quick.
Okay. Camera.
So basically these are appliance molds directly off the printer. This one I actually filled with a dimensionally solid resin, so it would give it a little more heft, and it wouldn't break if I began to put a lot of clamping pressure on it. But that actually got me a little silicone appliance that directly off the printer that I can go and apply, and that's exactly how we would apply anything on the day. So, and I didn't get a chance to show Cyborg's head. I was going to do that. But this is another great appliance that we made. We were tasked with making something that was going to be a rigid appliance, but reusable every day. And I didn't want to actually have it be made out of a soft material that would look bad after a week or so of application. So we did generate this hard piece that does glue to his head, but it does have a replaceable foam latex gasket on the inside that we can replace every time we need to. So That's my presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Bill Crichton. I'm so glad that you watched me. I hope I said something that somebody can take away.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great.
Yeah, awesome. Very awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people are enjoying it. So we're going to go to Bill now. Bill, you're up.
Cool. Hey, guys. Actually, I do have Sideboard open right here, so I can show you that real quickly in terms of what Andy's talking about. Just an extraction to create this gasket. Magnets. This is magnet to magnet brought out on top of that. And then we got the hard piece. Okay, I'll just show on this real quick. And then live Booleans. Again, for all the details, clients are going to change this constantly. Move this here, move that there. Really want to utilize live Booleans as much as possible. All right, so now I'm just going to talk about Deathstroke a little bit. And what we get is usually some really nice concept art. This is Luca. I've never said his last name before. Nimolato. And great thing about working with a concept artist like Luca is he's actually built a lot of this stuff in ZBrush as well to get his turnarounds so he can do his back views and all that really quickly. So he'll sketch stuff out in ZBrush and do his paint overs in Photoshop. And so what's really nice working with some of the clients that we do with that, I'll actually receive those files from Luca, and we can use those to better understand maybe a side view or back view, something that's not otherwise been defined. For a lot of what we do, we're the ones kind of defining that from the front paint view. So I saw a lot of people in the chat asking about scans. We'll get scans either from vendors. We just built a 3D scanner rig here. Bird and Andy built one. I also have a hand scanner, a 9Scan Pro Plus, and we can scan, boots, different clothing items, whatever we need to start building on top of. And that's where a lot of our scale and base meshes are from the 3D scans. So step one is really cleaning up that scan. I got the raw scan, usually an actor. This is just a purchase one, so we're not displaying any of our actors who might not like it. So really, first step is to clean up our scans. If they're getting any appliances and stuff, we might clean up the skull cap. Otherwise, I might just leave it alone. And to do that, I've just duplicated this. Did a quick high-res Dynamesh just to close any holes. And I remeshed it down to something that looks more like this. Subdivided that up, and then I just projected the original raw scan back onto it. And this is super useful even if you just have a sculpt of something to be able to get a subdivided version of that. So don't forget about projection. I'm in the wrong spot though. Subtool, project. I use that all the time. That way it's really nice working with clients. You can always come back down to more of a primary form and make any drastic changes and keep all your tertiary elements and that kind of stuff. For this guy, I even came in and blocked out just with a Q-cube some lines, and with my subdivided one, I just kind of reposed them to be more straight on. And then I'll start building costume pieces on top of that. Now also from the art department and different productions, we'll get these nice breakdowns of what's going to be the hard part elements that CCE is going to make. Another thing to keep in mind with those two is practical lighting, especially on someone such as Black Lightning. Let me hop over to Season 3 Black Lightning here. This is just on our generic model again. But we got to think about where to hide batteries, components, hardware, all that kind of stuff. So this wasn't in his concept art. But Andy ended up designing this really nice back pouch, and I went in with some the components that I actually built in CAD just to get really exact dimensions on them, because that's just faster for me because I come from CAD, and plugged them in. So we got a little hole, flip the switch, and turn on his whole suit. Andy also went in and made a Black Lightning mask here. This is all ZModeler brush. That's the print file version, but this is all ZModeler. I use ZModeler every day. I'm from a surface. And one reason to use ZModeler every day is because, and they kind of touched on this with your Mandalorian helmet, so many notes we get from clients, oh, can we round the edge or chamfer the edge? And, you know, you can do that instantly with ZModeler as opposed to more of a high-res sculpt. But we do utilize everything on our plate here. I was also just going to, Andy ended up touching on this, but since we're only getting like front views perhaps, or a back view doesn't really tell me where this mask falls, I will use polypaint. And a lot of times too, pre-COVID, I'll have the costume designer or any sort of client looking right over my shoulder and giving me live instructions. So polypaint becomes really a great way to say, does it land here? Does it end here? And we got to think about how we're attaching that to the face, whether it's magnets or a band that's hidden by another element.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. Paint it off first and then work with your team.
Paint it off, get my footprint.
Yeah.
Instead of the topo brush, what I'll do a lot of times is I just rip this face off of Super Average Man. And that already has some nice topology, especially around the eyes. So if I'm going to come in and build a mask, I can just throw that on there. And I like to use ZProject to throw that back down onto the form. And another thing, I'm going to mirror and weld this, and I'm going to work in symmetry, even if it's diving into his head on one side. The human body is not actually symmetrical. But I'm going to work in symmetry because it's literally half the work. And then from there, I can extrude. And I'm really getting pretty good at eyeballing this based on the dimensions here. But I do have a 1-inch cube. And I could come in, just to touch on that a little bit more. I like to use ZModeler brush here and insert multiple edge loops. And I can go ahead and divide this into, well, I've got to do 31 divisions. I can divide that into 30/2 of an inch and, you know, just count it off. I use this all the time just to get some quick dimensions. So now I got 3 30/2, and I might drag that up and use my scales upgrades. I might bring this in and then extrude to that dimension from my surface that I've placed on here.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a good one for the taking.
I use this all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, just using again, insert multiple edges. Oh, come on, not on my cube. That's why. And then you just got to know a little bit of math. But if I want 1/8 inches, I'll divide it by 7. And now I can get an 1/8 inch. Maybe I'll just pull that out. And I know that this dimension here is an 1/8 inch. I do like that. I'll use that quite a lot. So now I've got a simple dynamic subdivided extraction. And why I like starting with the surface is because I know that the shell is evenly extruded all around. So it's really going to help me in 3D printing. And then from there, I just subdivide it up. And now I can go in and sculpt, you know, some little more Batman-y anger frown lines. And what I'll do, another reason using QCube, I got all these poly groups really nice, so I can quickly mask off what I don't want to affect on my edge lines and that kind of thing. Now I can go in and just really sculpt on top of this, come down to my subdivision levels, blend this out a little more. And this isn't just for masks. I use this for every single piece that we work on. And then I can quickly UV this and UV master. I won't have time to show that kind of thing, but I quickly UV'd this, masking off any sort of detailed panel lines. And then I've just come down here. I've turned layers on, right? When working with clients, we want to really utilize our layers so we can tone stuff down, turn stuff off completely. Because we're not just getting notes back, not just from the costume designer and their team. It goes all the way up the ladder to the showrunner, to the producers. We get a lot of feedback, and you really have to build your part in such a way that you can quickly edit it. Nothing's concrete.
So you're UV mastering this with polygrouping, and then you're having your pattern, and you're using surface noise to put the pattern based upon UV.
Yep. So I've just turned on my UVs with the surface noise plugin, and now if they come back and say, oh, we really want it to be even a different kind of texture, smaller. Yeah, the scales on this stuff changes all the time. Maybe, oh, well, we found this fabric. Can it match that fabric scale? And I got to come in and tweak all these settings. Let me recenter this. Great way to add texture.
You're putting on a layer so you can take it on and off whenever you need it as well.
Correct. So once I apply this, I apply it on a layer, and I can tone it out there.
If you don't mind me saying, sometimes it even depends on what kind of a finish we're going to put on it. If it's a thicker paint, we're going to want a more intense texture, or vice versa.
That's true. And so the layers allow me to also show the client more what the final product's going to look like. I'll tone it down for that, and then I'll punch it back up for the 3D print. We've got a mold, paint primer, so we prime it before molding and prime it after. So really got to start thinking about that.
So when you guys are doing this, because you're doing this as a distinct pattern, right? It's going to be a major thing that's seen on the character a lot. Are you guys sending images first, or are you guys like printing off one and then giving the client, here's a printed off version of what the pattern would look like in real life?
It's absolutely a combination of both. We do images as much as we can, get as much feedback before going into a print, but then I'll run a test print either on our Markforge, also on the Form. Those are all affordable printers, and on our Raise printer. So we'll do tests, and something like this, I might print 3 different versions of the detail level, and even go all the way through a paint test and that kind of thing. Another method we utilize here at CC is not even printing some of these textures, like Deathstroke on Solo. Deathstroke gets carbon fiber textures across all of his parts. We actually printed them clean and then laid on a carbon fiber fabric or vinyl. So that way we're not sanding and worrying about sanding all the detail. It's just going to be there down the line.
Are you guys doing that bath thing, carbon thing, where you put, it's got the sheet in the bath? Is that the one? Or do you
We've looked at that, but that's not really, right now we haven't found a way in our workful to make that really work.
Oh yeah, it's just interesting. I've
never water screen dipping.
Yeah, water screen thing, yeah.
It's a lot. The vinyl's a lot thicker than you would think.
Oh, is it?
A little bit. Yeah, it looks really diaphanous and soft, but it's really just not.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys calculate, Andrew? They're asking, how do you calculate mold shrinkage for all this that you guys are doing? Do you guys do anything?
Typically, we choose molds materials that really don't shrink that much. The foam latex does shrink, so we have to do things with that. And somebody asked why we went with foam latex instead of silicone, and the answer is gluability. But most of the shrinkage of most of our mold and casting materials is really nominal, so it's not really a giant factor.
Okay.
Somebody asked about CAD, and I come from CAD, so I use CAD quite a bit. Not so much lately. I'm building everything inside ZBrush now and using my cube. But for something like Deathstroke's belt veneer, I was given exact dimensions of the leather pieces they want to use. I need to know that this is going to be thick enough to be molded and cast and not lose this whole middle section of that piece. So I actually drew out in CAD really quickly sort of my template here, and then remade this in ZModeler and just extruded it and placed it around his body.
So you did that a couple at a time. You didn't do like the bridging to start off. And then...
I didn't do the bridging. I think I started in the back of them.
Yeah.
And then I just love control and dragging with my gizmo and bringing it around and shaping it around there. You could see so much ZModeler that I was using on all of these pieces.
You can actually see that what we've gone in and we've scanned the muscle suit underneath there.
CCE will also build this foam muscle suit. So the actors are usually already really fit, but it will even go in and really soup them up. So this was scanned with our hand scanner, just on the actor's body form. And then that way we can build on top.
That just makes our hard parts more accurate to the final suit.
Absolutely. These were match moved onto the muscle suit here, his chainmail pieces.
What about the fitting for the actor? How many fittings do you guys have to go through for?
A lot.
Yeah.
Typically as many as we can get. I mean, how many? 4 or 5 fittings? I mean, it depends on how local they are. How many times we can get them. But Bill, what would you say?
I'd say probably on average about 6. Yeah. And the local thing is something to talk about too with 3D scanning. I don't have to get an actor in LA in the studio, especially during COVID and quarantine. We had actors in Canada. We got them in Texas or wherever they're from, in Atlanta, and they can go to a vendor there, get scanned, and we don't lose any of our work. We could get going right away. Mm-hmm. We don't have to cover their mouths. Some people get claustrophobic, and that's no longer really a concern.
Are you finding photogrammetry is pretty much the go-to for scanning for you guys? Is the most what people have been doing for getting the scans? Or is
photogrammetry is absolutely the way to go. It's nothing is going to beat that in terms of resolution. Do we have any time to still talk to Bird? I would love to get to him over.
No, absolutely.
Sure, yeah, I can hand it off to Bird here.
Yeah.
Do you think it's about time? I think we're probably running close.
Yep.
No worry. You got time. It's just me and Joseph next.
No, we're after this.
We're after this. So you can go still.
I don't want to cut you short, Bill. I just want to give Bird a chance.
Oh, no problem.
And Andrews, no worries, because we already said me and Joseph probably we're gonna be going past the time anyways. So all good. Go ahead. So do you want to go full webcam on Bird?
Bird, what do you say?
Here, Bird.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm a beginning ZBrush user, so don't expect any tips and tricks from me. Basically, what I'm doing is trying to figure out how to use ZBrush from our production standpoint. Behind me here, I've got our robot, and he's working on a bust right now. You can kind of see his head coming out there. Bill talked about live boolean a lot. That's where I'm actually learning anything right now. And it's about kind of splitting up the bodies and figuring out how to get parts into the machine in the first place. Some of the problem of making things of people standing in weird positions and that kind of stuff. So ZBrush to me, I'm more of a CAD person myself, and I'm in the production process, so you wouldn't normally be using the more artistic tool. For us, though, it helps for me to come through and be able to cut things apart and find the areas that, because for the robot, it's different than a mold. There's different issues that you have and how it can cut things, the undercuts that it can do. It takes it away from the 3D department and can give it to me so that I can be able to handle those things and have a little bit more control in that process. We can see what he's doing right now. The edges where the bust is actually cut off, it's kind of important for the shoulder cuts and the arm cuts whenever we do a costume. How the costume comes up under somebody's arm or in their the different joints of your body can be a tight spot or you need more room kind of thing. That helps me in just being able to see where it's going to have a problem. And you can see if someone has an issue where there might be a little clapboard overhang that the machine can't cut kind of situation.
How many axes is that, Bird? How many axes?
It's a 6-axis robot, and the table itself is the 7th axis. It's got a rotary table on the bottom there.
And what material are you doing right now? What are you using?
That's a 6-pound urethane foam, and it is to the other person's question there. It is a KUKA. It's a KR210. So it's just your typical small industrial robot with a 12,000 RPM router head on the end.
Awesome. That's great. And then
somebody asked, are hands still an issue in full body scans? And we like the photogrammetry scans because they do take it in an instant and there's no chance of somebody wavering. but we don't typically rely on the body scans for the hands. We will, if we're going to be doing gloves or something like that, we will take traditionally molded hand casts and head casts, just so we have that backup. Just so we can double check that everything is really perfect to life.
So you always do both. You'll do both. Then you'll do an actual traditional both of the actor and then do a photogrammetry.
We'll do both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from that plaster cast of the life cast, I'll 3D scan it again to get a cleaner version if the hands didn't come out in the body scan.
We like having backup. We don't do anything once.
Do you guys scan the cast sometimes? Because obviously now you don't have the actor and it's perfectly still. Do you guys scan those as well to really get it? Because then you can use a laser scanner and go really slow.
Exactly. Or sometimes there wasn't going to be a hard piece on their, or sculpted piece on their hand, and now it's changed. They added some stuff. So sometimes we got to walk back and I'll scan the life casting.
Right. Okay. Yeah, your art director comes knocking. Guess what? You have to do now.
Yeah. We found money in the budget.
Other departments. We share data with other departments, and it's nice to be able to have something for them. We've got a traditional life cast of the makeup department or whatever.
One thing I just want to say really quickly, looking at the TV behind Andy, one thing that ZBrush allows us to do is we'll have a meeting with all of our department heads, and I'll throw up the model, and we'll zoom around it, and we'll talk about, hey, what can I do before printing and outputting? Any sort of things that they see, hey, this might be an issue, and we'll solve them right there in a quick half-hour meeting.
Yeah, it gets instant feedback for you. Make your changes right there.
Yeah. Can we mute Bird?
When he stood up, that machine got a lot bigger. The big robot.
I saw somebody had asked about the smallest size we can go with. Our smallest tool in the machine is actually an 1/8" bit. So we do 1/8" round over end mill. You can actually get quite detailed stuff out of it.
And it's a great. I'm sorry. What were you going to say, Paul?
Is that the only Axis machine you have, or do you guys have other CNC machines? Is that the only one you guys have in your shop?
That's the only one we have, but it's really versatile. I mean, we can take the foam and we can tool it up to a greater detail. And we've even, Bert has helped me put clay on it in the past. We actually sculpted a creature out of clay. Yeah, great, because I mean they do that all the time in auto design, but we just decided to try it here, and it worked great.
Well, you were doing an experiment too, Andrew, like where you were printing stuff and then hand sculpting on it again after the process, right? You were doing.
Yeah, that was the CNC. That was that robot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Andrew was at Monster Palooza, Son of Monster Palooza, and he had a big bust he was working on. He was talking to me about how that was pretty awesome too, the way you were doing that. I think it's a great marriage of bringing in here to digital with your digital and marrying all this together is a great way to work and use the tools, right? And use the benefits that you get from each one of them. Yep. Does Bert have anything that he wants to share on screen inside of ZBrush or anything else with that, or just to make sure?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure. We don't want to leave you. We want to make sure if you have something inside of ZBrush, you want to share that.
But it really is it's a testament to how ZBrush, how it's gotten so easy to use, and it's Bert can he really just hit the ground running, and he's done great.
I think how
long have you been using it, Bert? Like when did you start using ZBrush?
About a year ago. I got into CCE. I kind of shoved my foot in the door when they were moving and helped them out with some facility stuff, and then the robot showed up and I kind of took over there. So I was the guy that had to figure out how to make things.
You're that guy. Figure it out. Figure it out.
The robot looks really good, and it's like, wow, I'd really love to have one, and but the one thing you don't realize is how long it takes to, with something that's got that many axes, how long it takes to create a toolpath for it. I mean, it really is an art to doing that. And Bert has really sussed that out. It's incredible how what you've got to do to it.
And let's not
because a robot like that, its instinct is to destroy itself, destroy the enclosure, and to destroy whatever part it's working on. And if you can keep it from doing that, then you've really succeeded.
Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, that is awesome. Is doing a bust of, what's the bust of?
Yeah, it's a bust of Cress Williams. He's the actor that plays Black Lightning, actually. And I picked him because you could kind of see some beard detail, but I didn't quite get down to the beard to see it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, with an eighth inch bit, you can actually do pretty good detail from it.
You can see pretty good from the nose up too. You can see from the nose up the really structure of his face and everything too.
And we typically wouldn't, unless it was just for reference, we wouldn't use the robot to create a something for the face. You know, the resolution isn't quite there. I would love to take a look at that Form 3L. I think that's going to be quite a game changer.
Yeah. Do you guys do any maquette stuff for the shows that you're working on?
Oh yeah, we try to generate a maquette for. If you want to see.
You want to go full screen on Andrew's?
Me?
There you go.
I'll bring a couple. Here's our Black Lightning maquette, which is really great. I mean, you got all of these parts. You've got the scan, and you can just do some great things with it. Here's our cyborg.
And you guys are just 3D printing these out and then just hand painting them right there in the shop.
Yep, exactly. Where you just, you gotta have your illuminated maquette.
Yeah, you gotta have light.
That's great.
Tell the director, look over here, look over here. Well, all the pieces too on your wall are just amazing too.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Years worth of work, right? A lot of that is your clay working too.
And what I've really started to do is, I love ZBrush. Even if I'm going to sculpt something in clay completely, I love beginning a sketch process in ZBrush. I can go home at night, I can be in bed, I can just be doodling, and I can come up with something. I can really flesh it out, and then I can, print a miniature of it that I could actually have with me when I went to attack something full size in clay. And it's just so much faster than actually like iterating designs in clay.
This has been awesome, guys. I really appreciate you guys sharing so much of your studio number one and sharing all this behind the scenes stuff. Like,
thank you.
What we're trying to do with this, with the pandemic, with cameras, seeing what we could do to up the presentations a little bit here, right?
Yeah.
So it was really awesome to see all the stuff that you guys were able to share with us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We're really honored to be here. We're, ZBrush is just such a huge part of our lives. It's wonderful to be a part of this community.
So Andrew, I don't know if you saw, but a couple people were chiming in. They're liking looks like a fun place to work. How do they get to work there at the Creative Character Engineering?
Send a resume if you've got any kind of skill. We never know what we're going to need. We need all kinds of skill sets. And that's one of the things I love about what it is that we do is, people come from all these crazy different backgrounds, just in the 3 people that we've got here, where our backgrounds are all so diverse, and you've got people who are, we do costumers and milliners and people who specialize in this and that and feather work and hair people, and, we'll take anybody. And we're always looking for good, talented new people. So, yeah. CreativeCharacter.com is our website, and there's a place on there where you can get in touch with us.
Okay. Do you go anywhere to recruit people, or are you just pretty much just?
Well, you can usually find us, as at Monsterpalooza. We're there every. Once that becomes a thing again, we'll be there again.
Any other shows?
We'd love to branch out, and we'd love to do other things. We'd love to do this. Anything ZBrush related. We'll show up for if you invite us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we would love to have you when we get back to reality, where we all can hug each other and touch and stuff. We can have you for. We always have. Portfolio reviews, right? And that's a great spot for people to show you their work, and you can talk to them. We would absolutely love to have you for something like that too.
Great. We love portfolios. I love seeing fresh new takes on fresh new ideas and and exciting new talent.
Yeah, so they've shared the link to you guys' site in the chat. So for those of you that are interested, there you go. Click that link, and then you can get a hold of them. So it'd be a great way to communicate and reach out and show Andrew some of your work. Get in that movie magic.
That's right. It's really cool stuff.
So are you guys mostly just doing films and TV, or do you guys branching out in anything else as well?
We do films, TV, commercials. I used to do just a ton of theme park related stuff. Not so much anymore. Really, our niche is television. We've been so fortunate to get involved with all of these wonderful superhero television shows, and It doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. And the boys, you know, just all of these different production companies coming to us. It's just been a fantastic thing, and just such an exciting. I always wanted to get into this aspect of it. I love. Not only do I love makeup, but I love suits and space suits and all kinds of things like that. And that, you know, even though we've done these superhero shows, but I think that we could just expand so much on what we do. And there's just such an untapped vista of things in front of us. It's just so exciting, you know. I would love to do a lot of spacesuit designs of our own internally, and I would love to start creating our own product. I've got ideas for short films that I would love to, you know, have the freedom. Now that we've got this space and we're really in it, we've only been in this new space for a couple of years, and finally we're getting to the point where it really works, and all the departments have what they need. You know, and now I can step back a little bit and maybe, you know, start to explore some of those ideas, get some original properties of our own.
That's awesome. Well, I know if anybody's lucky enough to work with Andrew, the years of knowledge and the stuff he has is unparalleled. Like, I'm sure Bill and Bert, you're probably eating it up.
I'm a kid in a candy store.
Yeah,
you know, working with a master sculptor and learning from him every day is.
Yeah, you guys got to realize Andrew.
I'm a kid from Denver.
Yeah,
never.
You guys got to realize Andrew is huge, man. Like, the stuff and the work that Andrew has is just amazing. I've been watching your work for years, Andrew.
I feel like I'm still beginning. I feel like the best is ahead of me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think artists like you too that are just have all that wealth and that information from your background of clay, and then when you get into something like ZBrush, it just, you know, the things you do, it's just like, what the heck, man? That's beautiful and amazing, the stuff that you're doing. So
let me show. If I voice.
I just want you guys to understand that are watching. Andrew's been in the film industry for a long time. He's worked on a lot of big films and big stuff. So this is a treat to have him be a part of this for us today.
This is I finished this up in ZBrush, and this is one that I've got to paint up soon. I really would love to have this for sale at Monsterpalooza or something next time. I thought a little crazy design of my own.
Nice. And you're airbrushing. You're going to airbrush paint it all.
I'm going to airbrush. Yeah, this is the base translucent skin tone of the cast urethane, but we're going to just go from there. Little pentagram goat of my own design.
Yeah. So when we get back to the real world, hopefully, guys, don't get to Monsterpalooza. Andrew's always there, man. Talk to him. You do both, right? You do Monsterpalooza and Son of Monsterpalooza, right?
Oh yeah, both. Yeah, and I love talking to people. I'm usually working on some kind of piece, either sculpting or painting something there. But I just love chatting with people all day. It's just so fun to meet people who have a like mind.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the summit this year, opening up your studio, and being here with us.
It's such an honor.
Yeah,
really.
Well, it's an honor for us, honestly, too, to see what you're doing with the application and see how you're using it.
It's really cool.
Yeah, especially the stuff, Andrew, you guys were talking about, mold making and the prosthetics. That's very different and unique. So it's really cool to see how you're using it.
Wonderful.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you guys all. Hopefully we see you three in the chat maybe throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be wild and crazy next with me and Joseph and a bunch of tips and tricks, and I don't know when we'll end.
I don't know either.
Forget this schedule now.
Can I just say thank you to everybody for watching? I'm so humbled that you did. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys being with us. It's been awesome, and I'll be chatting with you guys in email after this for sure.
All right, great.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye. All right. Okay.